Good evening. This is your security update, tracking key developments across Nigeria, Africa, and the wider world. Tonight's report reflects a familiar but troubling pattern: persistent violence, fragile security response, and the growing strain on civilian life. Secondly, the government of the United States is increasing its pressures on Nigeria. Cargo military flights have been coming into Nigeria, and the deployment of 200 military men into Nigeria will begin this evening in Niger State, where armed bandits raided 3 rural communities, killing at least 32 persons. Witnesses describe heavy armed attackers arriving on motorcycles, opening fire and burning homes and stores. Survivors fled into surrounding bushes and hid there until the raiding party had departed. The attacks follows the recurring pattern of rural raids targeting civilian settlements. Its significance is clear. Bandits continue to demonstrate mobility, coordination, and operational confidence. Repeated violence of this nature, displacement, weakens farming activity and erodes public trust in state protection. In a separate development, the United States has also begun a new phase of training of Nigerian troops. The program focuses on counterinsurgency tactics, intelligence handling, logistics, and battlefield coordination. This forms part of an ongoing bilateral security cooperation that came about following the vow by the United States President Donald J. Trump to come into Nigeria, guns blazing, to take down the terrorists who are killing Christians and committing what is now known as Christian genocide, denied by Muslims and government officials and widely accepted by Christians within and outside Nigeria. In Katsina State, violence resumed after the collapse of locally negotiated peace deals with bandit groups. At least 21 persons were killed. Community-level ceasefires often lack enforcement mechanisms, and it has been reported that over 20 local government councils or areas in Katsina had entered into such accounts. For civilians, the consequences is renewed fear and instability. For policymakers, of course, this decision reinforces the need for structural disarmament and credible monitoring frameworks. And in any case, critics have pointed out that you do not go to communities in any jurisdiction to enter into peace accords with bandits who challenge state sovereignty, that these actions that the communities have taken may not actually help the communities. The new Minister of Defense has warned communities that the bandits who come for negotiation for peace are coming to their communities because they were under pressures. Once the pressures ease, the bandits will, and as our experience have now shown, discard the agreements and go on attacking sprees. In Kano State, a major road accident claimed approximately 30 lives. Both sides speeding and possible mechanical failure. Though not an armed attack, the tragedy highlights Nigeria's severe civil safety crisis. Road fatalities have continued to impose heavy social and economic costs on Nigeria and the people in Nigeria. Emergency services already strained by conflict-related casualties face additional pressures. Security sources continue to assess the implication of an earlier massacre in Kwara State that left over 160 people dead. The scale of the killing shocked national attention and caught international attention. Kwara State had long been considered relatively insulated from extremist attacks until a few months ago. A few months ago, the Al-Qaeda-affiliated group JNIM claimed that it had initially killed one Nigerian soldier in its first attack. A few months later, the same group said it had carried out a second attack that had taken the lives of 2 soldiers. The incidents we are witnessing now may just be a signpost to the fact that the Al-Qaeda and the Boko Haram have actually set up base in that area, and this may not be the last of the attacks that will take place. Though the Nigerian military and the government have sent large number of troops to the area, it is unlikely that these troops will displace or the bandits that have been taking hold of the area for well over a year now. And in Zamfara State, military patrol units were ambushed by armed groups again. Casualties were reported among soldiers. Ambush tactics signaled tactical adaptation by the bandits and insurgents who are familiar with the terrain and who use their knowledge of the terrain to attack soldiers or security agencies who may be coming to the area. Such incidents affect troop morale and complicate clearance operations. They also highlight ongoing intelligence and surveillance gaps in Nigeria's fight against insurgency. And in Borno State, ISWAP fighters attacked a security outpost using heavy weaponry. Reports indicate temporary overrunning of positions. The assault demonstrates enduring insurgent capability. Years of counterinsurgency attacks, extremist groups retain the ability to stage disruptive attacks. This reinforces concern about long-term conflict endurance in the Lake Chad region. And finally, again in Niger State, renewed violence triggered fresh civilian displacement in parts of the state. Relief camps reported rising arrivals. Displacement disrupts education, livelihoods, and healthcare access. And in other parts of Africa, in Sudan's greater Kordofan region, drone attacks killed more than 90 civilians. The attacks occurred amid the country's ongoing civil war. The use of area weaponization against populated areas signals a technological escalation. Civilian casualties deepen Sudan's humanitarian crisis. Across the Sahel, armed Islamic groups intensified cross-border attacks. Fragile states face overstretched security forces. Civilian casualties and displacement continue to rise. Governance vacuums allow extremist networks to expand influence, and regional security frameworks remain under severe strain. And in Islamabad, Pakistan, a suicide bombing killed 32 people. Authorities link the attacks to sectarian militancy. Urban terror incidents of this nature generate nationwide shock and trigger intensified counter-terrorism operations. And from Ukraine, Russian strikes targeted Ukrainian port infrastructure and civilian areas. Casualties included at least 4 deaths. Port disruption carried global economic implications, particularly for grain logistics, as in spite of the fact that Ukraine is at war, it still produces a significant portion of the grains that are used globally. Well, if you subscribe to this channel by simply clicking on the subscribe button, or you join as a member so that you see some videos that are for members. And now we'll turn our attention to the developments in Nigeria concerning our relationship with the United States of America. In the last few weeks, there have been reports of American big jets bringing equipment to Nigeria over its fight with the insurgents in the country. As well, we are seeing reports about the United States Air Force jets dropping equipment and personnel in some parts of Nigeria. Of course, that is not the only way the United States is intervening. President Donald J. Trump at the prayer breakfast meeting that held 2 weeks ago in Washington also said that his government had attacked terrorists in Nigeria and had continued to attack terrorists in Nigeria and will keep attacking them until the terrorists are completely defeated. There are some voices in Nigeria that have been dissenting and complaining about the intervention. One of the arguments is that Nigeria is surrendering its sovereignty to the United States by allowing the American military to be part of the efforts within Nigeria to fight terrorism. They are also arguing, of course, the United States government is working through the back door to establish a military base in Nigeria. Well, as far as I do know, the government of the United States has been immensely supportive of Nigeria in the fight against insurgency. As a matter of fact, much more than many other countries in the world. In particular, you will recall that in spite of the fact that there have been laws in the United States that prohibit the sale of arms to militaries that are complicit in violation of human rights, the government of President Trump in its first tenure exempted Nigeria and sold some 12 jets to retrofitted jets to Nigeria, which we are proudly displaying and saying that they are helping us in the fight against insurgency. The United States government, of course, as well as the United Arab Emirates, has been sanctioning and provided sanction against individuals that are complicit in financing or supporting terrorism. The United Arab Emirates, for instance, said it had convicted some people in UAE who were complicit in setting up accounts and supporting raising funds for Boko Haram in Nigeria, and has sent a list of their accomplices in Nigeria to the Nigerian government. The Nigerian government has not said much about what it has done to those who were referred to it by the government of the United Arab Emirates. The Punch newspaper reported that the United States Treasury Department had sanctioned several people. Among the people it listed as having sanctioned, one, Salihu Adamu, also known as Salih Yusuf, who was born on August 23, 1990, and was identified as having ties to Boko Haram. Yusuf was among 6 Nigerians convicted in 2022 for setting up a Boko Haram cell in the United Arab Emirates to raise funds for insurgents. The 6 men convicted in the UAE for attempting to send 780. Another person that was designated as such was Abdullahi ibn Umar al-Banawi, also known as Ba Idrissa. Abu Musab al-Banawi was referred to. Habib Yusuf was listed with varying years between 1992 and 1995. Was identified as a Boko Haram leader and sanctioned by the United States for terrorism provisions. There is also one Ibrahim Al-Hassan, born January 31, 1981, was listed with a Nigerian passport. He resided in Abu Dhabi, United Arab Republic, and was linked with Boko Haram. There's also Abu Bakr ibn Muhammad ibn Ali Maninuki, also known as Abu Bilal al-Manuki, was born in Menor, Borno State, was identified with having links to ISIS. And then there are some other people, of course, including one Nnamdi Osun Benson, born in March 21, 1987, and was listed under Cyber 2 sanctions. But the bigger news is the bill that is being put together by some members of the Congress in the United States to get the United States government to take some actions, including sanctioning individuals, organizations, and also providing aid to people that have been affected by these insurgents in Nigeria. On the screen is a proposed bill that is being sponsored by Mr. Smith of New Jersey for himself, for Mr. Moore of West Virginia, and few congressmen in the United States sponsoring the bill. If you look at the screen, you see the systematic religious persecution has persisted in Nigeria since at least 2009, including mass murder, kidnappings, rape, village destruction, forced displacement of persons perpetrated by Boko Haram, the Islamic State, West African province, ISWAP, full of militant groups and extremist organizations. Section 2 estimates indicate that between 50,000 to 125 Christians have been martyred between 2009 and 2025, with more than 19,000 Christian churches attacked or destroyed. Now, the bill seeks, among other things, to according to the bill, Section 5 says that there is bipartisan congressional support to consider appropriate security cooperation with Nigeria, including conditioning of foreign assistance as was done in the fiscal year 2026 national security and related programs appropriation signed into law by President Trump as part of Consolidated Appropriation Act 2026 to enhance protection of innocent lives. 6 says the United States shall deliver humanitarian assistance co-funded by the government of Nigeria through trusted faith-based and non-governmental organizations in Nigeria's Middle Belt states. The Department of State and Department of Treasury shall impose targeted sanctions, including visa bans, asset freezes under Global Magnitsky Human Rights Accountability Act on individuals or entities responsible for severe religious freedom violations, including the following: Fulani ethnic militias in Nigeria, B, former governor of Kano State, Miyetti Cattle Breeders Association of Nigeria, MACBA, and D, Miyetti Allah Kautuho. Of course, these are recommendations. The bill is passed, this will happen, but it didn't end there. It also mandated the Secretary of State. According to Section 8, says the Fulani ethnic militias in Nigeria qualify as a foreign terrorist organization under Section 2019 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, USC 1189. Section 9, individuals and networks, domestic or foreign, that provide support to these Fulani ethnic militias shall be investigated and held accountable. It goes further to say that the Nigerian government in Section 12 should thoroughly investigate instances of penalties or imprisonment under blasphemy laws or Sharia law and work to end these practices and repeal such laws. Of course, this lays down a reporting line on how this shall be reported. Well, as expected, this elicited a lot of controversy. There are some writers and commentators who are giving the impression that the United States government is taking these actions not based on facts and not based on any reasonable ground. However, the point that is often forgotten is that for over 20 to 30 years, Christian groups have been reporting, have been complaining around the world about the persecution of Christians in Nigeria. Christian groups have been documenting, and the Christian Association of Nigeria in the 80s and 90s documented several demolition of churches, discrimination against Christians, abduction of Christian girls by Muslim traditional rulers and clerics, as well as forceful conversion of some persons, especially those living in predominantly Muslim areas. And of course, there are some international organizations such as the Open Doors that have been keeping count of the killings in Nigeria, the destruction of churches, the destruction of places of worship. And recently, we also had some northern politicians blame the wife of the president for going to the United States to increase this pressure. As a matter of fact, she did go to the United States to give a different narrative about what is happening, because both she and her husband are not fans of the narrative that Christians have been discriminated in Nigeria. And so it's obvious that there won't be any agreement as to what should be the appropriate actions to be taken. And there are people in Nigeria, both in government and outside government, that believe that the situation in Nigeria as today, as far as religious freedom is concerned, is okay with them. There are many people, however, who also disagree that it is not okay, and that efforts should be made by government to solve these problems. There have been some efforts of government to engage in interfaith communications between the two religious groups. Last year, schools in 5 states were closed down, including Christian schools, because it was a period for Muslims to do their annual fasting. Of course, you cannot force people who do not belong to your religion to stop their activities because you are fasting. This only happens in Sharia countries. And the fact that some state governments are doing this in Nigeria also shows that these state governments are implementing Sharia. Secondly, I have advised that the Nigerian government ought to have instituted a very powerful committee investigate the claims that have been made that Christians in large numbers are being killed, to investigate the claims that churches, disproportionately a high number of churches compared to Muslim mosques that have been destroyed. And so far, the government is not prepared to do any investigation. The fact that the government is not prepared to do any investigation means that the government believes that the allegations that have been made by the government in the United States are true and correct. And these allegations are not just made by the government in the United States. These allegations have been coming. There are several databases around the world that document, that keep records of the crisis that happen in Nigeria and other parts of the world. And finally, to those who argue, and I think very wrongly, that the fact that Muslims are also killed means that there is no genocide or no targeted attacks point by several missed the point. And I've made the point very clear. And I think there is a commentator, Dr. Dahiru Majid, who has made the point very clear that if a Muslim goes to kill Muslims in large number, it will not be called genocide. But if a Muslim goes to kill people outside the Muslim faith, that could be called genocide. You could call the killing, according to him, the killing of Muslims fratricide, brothers killing brothers, which does happen regularly, even during with communal clashes within ethnic groups. People target people of the same ethnicity or plans to kill. The second one is that the fact that Muslims also kill does not negate the fact that Christians are targeted. And in any case, the Yazidis were subject of attacks and genocide in Iraq and part of the Middle East, notwithstanding the fact that Yazidis were a minority and many more Muslims may have been killed than even the Yazidis. But that did not change the fact that the Yazidis were targeted. My name is Rimamnde Shawulu. This is The Other Side. If you're enjoying our content, please sign up as a member to support the channel, or you can share our video